With the release of the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo course-corrected in a way that fostered a lot of goodwill with longtime and new Nintendo fans. I mean, after the incredible success of the Wii, it's not a surprise that Nintendo tried to continue with the name with the Wii U and tried to do something experimental, but that also would be different enough to differentiate that console from the Wii itself. However, after the horrible failure of the Wii U, the Nintendo Switch has been everything most Nintendo gamers wanted, including myself. And while yeah, I could use a higher powered console, what the Switch offers is amazing in its own right. And on top of the console itself, the games that have released from Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch have been some of the best in those series respectively. Just look at Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. Amazing games. And there were some great ones on the Wii U too, like Tropical Freeze. But the biggest point of all this is that with the Nintendo Switch and what they've been doing since, we've seen Nintendo showing they're listening and they know what their fans want. And this is especially true when it comes to the Metroid series, and that's nowhere more true than with the Metroid Prime 4 announcement. Seriously, go watch the hype videos from these fans and the reaction videos. It was insane. And during the last decade, we've seen Nintendo release a main and pretty quality title for almost all of its main franchises, except for Metroid. Because as of 2019, there has not been a Metroid Prime game released in 12 years, with 2007 having Metroid Prime Corruption released then. At least games in the mainline trilogy, not counting things like Echoes and everything. And in those other franchises that have released games, like I said, things like Breath of the Wild, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and Super Mario Odyssey and other games even, have been some of the best games we've ever seen in those franchises. Now, if you know any Metroid fans, or you are one yourself, you know that the Metroid fan base is super passionate, super intense, and something like Metroid Prime 4 means a lot to them. But I think the story of Metroid Prime 4 so far has showed both Nintendo's old style of development, creation, and publishing, as well as their new one that's been so successful with the Nintendo Switch. This has caused a lot of tragedy and sadness for many, but also a bright light for the future of Metroid Prime 4 and the series and Nintendo in general. And that is why we're going to talk about what happened yesterday and what it means for the future of the franchise. And if you're enjoying this content and enjoy anything related to video games, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications. Metroid Prime 4 was first announced at E3 2017, which now is over a year and a half ago. And since then, we haven't heard anything about the game, like literally anything at all. There was a little bit of rumblings and rumors, but there's been no official thoughts or updates about the development since then. All we had learned since the announcement was that Retro Studios wasn't working on it, and they were the developer behind the original Metroid Prime trilogy, and we'd also heard it was being developed in combination between Nintendo internal development, Bandai Namco, and Bandai Namco Singapore, and it was a really weird situation. We also heard Reggie Fils-Aimé, of course, as the PR guy he is. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, he's actually really good at his job, but of course he's saying it's going well, development's fine, and all this kind of stuff. But the video yesterday showed us a bit of a difference. Nintendo posted a video titled Development Update on Metroid Prime 4 for the Nintendo Switch, in which Shinya Takahashi decided to tell us what was going on, and this was a huge move for Nintendo of transparency and openness that we're going to talk about later, but I think is a big deal and was a huge positive from them and something they should be commended for. So the big news is that Metroid Prime 4's development has been completely scrapped. That means at least a year and a half, if not more. It did say it was now in development for Nintendo Switch at that E3 announcement. We don't know exactly how long it had been being developed before that, but that just goes to show that it's been at least a year and a half of work that has been completely scrapped at this point. It's been given to Retro Studios, who, like I said before, developed the original series, and I think are really good hands to put it in, but more on that in a minute. And basically, the whole game's development is being restarted completely from the beginning, and the game is basically being restarted from the ground up. I'm sure they'll take a little bit of assets and stuff like that from the new game, but for the most part, it's going to be a whole different thing. Now, while the reason the development was scrapped wasn't expressly stated in this video, besides saying that it wasn't up to par for Nintendo and it wasn't what they wanted to give fans, I think the development situation had something to do with it. In large part might be the reason it happened. Like I said, it was a really baffling situation, and I think really showed the old Nintendo and their old style of trying to experiment without really knowing what to do and why they're doing it. And specifically that they did it with Metroid Prime 4 is what boggles my mind the most. So Nintendo chose this experimental strategy, and I think one of the most ill-advised strategies they could go with, which was that Metroid Prime 4 was going to be developed between multiple studios internationally. So like I said, we at least know that there was development at Nintendo Internal, Bandai Namco, and Bandai Namco Singapore. We don't know beyond that, but we know something was going on with at least those 3 different studios. And the goal was to have them all working on different parts or different sections or different whatever parts of the game. We don't know exactly, but to bring those all together and make a cohesive experience. And this has been done before. I mean, you look at something like Assassin's Creed Rogue, which in total had development from 7 different studios, and while it did have a main one, and we don't really know exactly what the main one was for Metroid Prime 4, there was a little bit of confusion about that. We do know with something like Assassin's Creed Rogue, it did have a main one, and then the other 7 helped. And it seems like Nintendo was going to take this strategy. However, with something like Assassin's Creed Rogue, that game came out in a year where 2 Assassin's Creed games were released right around the same time, and it didn't have a big chip on its shoulder. Actually, it didn't really have a chip on its shoulder at all. People were kind of getting burnt out of the series at that point. Whereas Metroid Prime 4 is a game that will bring endless praises upon Nintendo, or it will sink their ship with those fans. And there's a lot more of them than I think we give credit for. And I think this is a strategy that is something the old Nintendo would do. Looking at something like the Wii U, we see them trying something experimental, trying something different, but trying to capitalize. They want money again because the Wii's success was incredible. It's unbelievable. One of the best-selling consoles of all time. And they could have done the same thing with Metroid Prime 4. They could have just continued pushing this game out, to push it out at the end of this year or next year, said, here's our game, we did what the fans wanted, we honored your request, and we got our money's worth. And even though fans get mad, it's just like, we did it, you know, we did our thing. Maybe some little apology in there somewhere, but it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And we all know that with Nintendo franchises, they take a lot of care of those things. There have been Nintendo games like Star Fox Zero and things like that that have come out where they've been questionable, and usually Nintendo is super intense about their games, and so seeing that like on the Wii U generation and some of the stuff on the 3DS and everything was a little disheartening. But then you also had the amazing stuff along the way that made you feel like, oh, maybe this was just a 1 or 2 off situation. And I think what Nintendo did here is super important and shows that they're not willing to do that anymore. So in the video, Nintendo explains they couldn't give an update because the development just wasn't going well. Since the announcement trailer, they haven't told us anything really. And that's because the development was in a state of turmoil. They decided that it wasn't going to be up to their standards, and in the end, they were passing it off to Retro Studios. Now, there are some rumors that Retro actually approached them saying like, hey, we'd like to do this. Maybe even showed them a demo or something like that. We don't know for sure, but it does seem like there was two-way interaction there, not just Nintendo reaching out to them. But this makes sense. I mean, they were the original creators of the Metroid Prime trilogy. And if you think about it, most of the time, giving the original creators the creative ability to make more stuff is the best decision, unless it seems like they're going to ruin it or they've made issues already before with the content. So with them handing it off to Retro, it's been completely rebooted from the beginning, but the original producer for the Metroid Prime trilogy, who was also sort of working with the teams already, is going to be working with Retro Studios, and that's Kensuke Tanabe. And I might have said his name wrong, I'm definitely not the best with Japanese names. But anyway, he was the original producer, and he's working again with Retro Studios on this game, which I think is a really good sign. But the last thing, and I think the thing that made a lot of people sad, was, of course, with the development being restarted, they specifically said, there's going to be a long road ahead of development before we reach any more updates on the game, similar to how it's been 1.5 years since the original announcement. And the development process is going to be extensive. The time is going to be a while. I'm going under the assumption this game's not going to come out until 2022, 2023, which could have benefits, which we'll be talking about in a minute, but it's going to be a long time. Now, a telling sign that making this video was a good sign for Nintendo and they did the right thing is the fan reactions from mainly big Metroid fans. And of course, there's sadness. No one wants to wait 2, 3, 4 more years for a Metroid game. That means it's going to be 6 or 7 years. It's going to be a Last Guardian situation, where it's years and years since the original announcement. However, what overpowers that sadness, and I think this is almost a unanimous thing between all of the people who like the Metroid series, is we want to wait for a great game. We do not want to have a crappy game come out just to push out. This needs to be awesome. And this decision shows all of us that A, they care about the game, they're not going to let it come out that's crappy. B, they respect us as fans because they don't want to give us a crappy game. See, they gave it to Retro Studios, which I think is undoubtedly the best decision they could make. I mean, obviously a lot of the people that worked there back in 2000 all the way up to 2007 and made that original trilogy aren't there, but many of them still are. And the fact that they made something like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, one of the best Donkey Kong games we've had, yeah, it shows that they know what they're doing, and I think this game couldn't be in better hands. And last, I think they're respecting the franchise and themselves in this situation. Coming out with this video and being so open and transparent, this is the Nintendo that we want, that we've always needed, that's came with the Nintendo Switch. Being transparent, talking about stuff that's going on, giving us the games we want. And this video was so transparent, literally telling us like, hey, we've been developing this, and it sucks. It didn't hit our standard. We're passing it off, and like, look, it's gonna be a while. We're sorry about this, but we want the best experience for you. That's awesome. And I think this whole situation is something to commend Nintendo for, because obviously they spent a lot of money on these last few years of development. This has to hurt for them too. As a business, developing stuff for a year and a half, 2 years, and then having to completely scrap it and hand it off to someone else, all those people who were paid for all that time are probably upset about it. They did all this work and put all this work in, and it's being scrapped. There's a lot that goes into something like this, the development of a game for so long, and then having to change it and just basically telling the studios like, look, you're not cutting it. We gotta switch to someone else. There's a lot of people that this might suck for, and internally in the development teams, and the money that was spent and the time that was spent, that's just gone now, and that's not always easy. And I mean, of course, there have been times before where this happens and then the studio ends up using those assets to make a spin-off or something, and who knows, we might see that. I don't know if any of us want that, but it's a possibility. Maybe they convert the assets into a different game and then they make something else entirely. But still, this isn't an easy move for anyone, and like they said in the video, they don't take this decision lightly. But I think the important takeaways from this are, A, we all wanted a retro studio in the first place. You go back and you watch all those reaction videos, and so many people were like, is it retro? Is retro making it? And we didn't know. And when we found out it wasn't, it was kind of worrying to some of us. And of course there are rumors they're making a Star Fox racing game and all kinds of stuff back then. But we didn't know any of that stuff for sure, and it was kind of saddening to see it wasn't them. But now that it is, I think most of us can agree that it's in good hands, and having Retro Studios do it is the right decision, and I'm really excited about it. I think also the fact that Nintendo wants this game to come out and be highly rated and be praised by fans shows that they're not gonna let this suck. After the situation, after putting out this video and all these years in development and then having to scrap it, this game is gonna rock because they're gonna make sure it rocks. I think it's gonna be something like what Sony does when you hear these Sony developers talk about how working with Sony, they just came in and they were all support, they were all excitement, and of course they have to be strict with them sometimes and make sure things happen, but Sony makes sure games are good. You look at things that came out last year in 2018 like God of War and Spider-Man, Detroit Become Human, the list goes on, and they were great. I think that Nintendo's pulling this method here, and they're gonna make sure Metroid Prime 4 is great for its fans, and I think it undoubtedly will be. Nintendo knows this game can't be mediocre. They know it can't come out and be low scoring. They know it can't come out and be a disappointment, because it will put a blotch on the series forever. It'll put a blotch on Nintendo forever. And these passionate Metroid fans are the ones that buy Switches day one and buy a ton of games for them and are making these videos because they love it. They're passionate. They're excited. And Nintendo making this video, being honest and open with us, this video and this decision are the Nintendo we want. It's them being humble. It's them being open. It's them being transparent. It's them listening. It's them letting us know that they care as much as we do. And at the end of the day, of course, you can say they're a business, they need to make money. Of course, obviously they need to make money. But I think that when you look at the idea of a business, one game is enough to make people leave, is enough to make people not want to buy more games, or to feel like, you know, if they did this, are they going to keep screwing me? You look at something like EA, and with Battlefront 2, I haven't wanted to buy an EA game. I look at something like Anthem coming up, which I really want, but I'm scared. Honestly, I am, because of what EA has done. And the same thing goes with other companies like Activision. Nintendo doesn't want to do that. And the amazing games, I mean, Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, even Nintendo's kind of like B-list games like Kirby and Yoshi. Kirby Star Allies was good. I mean, I don't think it was a great game, but it was really good by Nintendo standards. And Yoshi looks like it's tracking up to be good as well, and I love the experimental nature of those games. And they know they can experiment with the Yoshi games and the Kirby games and have weirdness in there, but they know us, they know gamers, and that's what's most exciting about this. And of course, you guys can let me know what you feel in the comments below and your opinions. If you disagree with anything that I said or if I missed any points, definitely leave those in the comments below. But what I think is happening right now is Nintendo is giving Metroid Prime 4 the room to launch into legend, like its predecessors. And in the meantime, in these couple years, Metroid Prime Trilogy Remastered, anyone? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're still watching at this point and you like the content and you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe and see a lot more videos like this. I have some ambitious projects coming up that I think are going to be really awesome for the gaming industry, and I hope you will as well. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, share it if you'd like, and if you thought it was good. Otherwise, I love all of you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.